There is no life I know to compare to pure imagination. Gene Wilder just spun over in his grave, just rolled over in his grave a little bit there. That high note killed it. Sorry. Fuck you! I killed it. Just like you killed Gene Wilder with that high note. He was all. We're going too much on this. Welcome back to StillerBros at the Movies, where today we are going to be seeing our first Spielberg movie of this series, Ready Player One. It is the second time in the entire, or is it the second time that we've read the book before seeing the movie? I don't know. There was Percy Jackson. Did you see Paper Towns before we saw it? I read Paper Towns. Okay, so yeah, this is the third time we've seen the book. We've both read the book before seeing the movie. Yeah, but don't go looking through our catalog for that because we will probably not remember it. But anyway, Ready Player One. This is it's also one of the many times that Steven Spielberg basically decided, okay, I'm going to take a quick break from making this big blockbuster that's basically a second tier of my movies to make a kind of smaller but still pretty important movie. Last time it was Jurassic Park, where he took a break during post to make Schindler's List. This time he took a break while they were rendering this movie to make to the post, which is why John Williams isn't scoring this. Alan Silvestri is. But we have in this movie Ty Sheridan. We have as Olivia, who was Cyclops in X-Men Apocalypse. We have Olivia Cook, who was the Dying Girl in Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. We got Mark Rylance, who is essentially Spielberg's good luck charm at this point. We have Simon Pegg, and we have, kind of controversially now, T.J. Miller. Yeah, kind of controversially. Kind of went away, didn't it? Kind of did, but at the same time, people aren't too happy that he's still in the movie. Yeah, well, they can't exactly. It doesn't matter. Anyway, this movie kind of has been getting a lot of shit from people lately, essentially saying that it's like The Big Bang Theory, where it's nothing but references and nothing to it. To which I say, screw you, to anyone who pauses it, to anyone who was watching that video and was pausing in the middle and was like, where are the fucking jokes? I'm like, keep watching the fucking show and you'll see them. They didn't even put the laugh track in that. You didn't even let the laugh track play. And when you pause the video. But it's also been compared now, the backlash has gotten into the male version of Twilight, which I kind of see something of that in the sense that the main character is kind of an empty shell, but the difference is that I think Wade Watts as a character exhibits more something than Bella ever did, and he's definitely not just a damsel in distress, and he is Stephanie Meyer, and you can try to rewrite that damn book as much as you want. Bella was a freaking damsel in distress. And overall the whole idea, look, the original book, Ready Player One, is okay. It's a very good read. It's a pretty breezy read. The first third of the book is pretty dry and bloated with exposition and a lot of tangents. Because basically Ernest Cline the writer is essentially taking us on a tour through his geeky mind, essentially saying, and then in 1980 this, and then in 1980 something, this happened, and he's basically listing off all the things that he's got an encyclopedic knowledge of. I think we're basically the target audience that the book was going for. The 20-somethings who we were born in the 90s. Our parents were teenagers in the 80s. So we're just coming at the end of their teenage years in the 80s. When the 80s started up. So we're in the key demographic where we grew up on the 80s, the stuff our parents watched. Yeah, so that's the kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not saying we are full of 80s nostalgia, but we grew up on a lot of this stuff, like Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, all this. Okay, we already explained we didn't actually grow up on Ghostbusters, but Back to the Future. There's Star Wars, and they expand. And actually, in the movie, they expanded it, so it's more than just 80s stuff. It's all they included a lot of stuff from the 90s and today to split, because it's 2045 in this movie. Why would they stick to the 80s? Why would they stick to something that happened 60 years ago? Yeah, but the book is pretty interesting. You actually told me and when you were reading it, that you dreamt about for 2 nights afterwards.
Yeah, after I finished reading the book, I had weird dreams for 2 nights afterwards that I connect to the actual book, to me actually finishing the book and picturing stuff in my head. And I don't remember it and I don't remember exactly what happened in them because I'm not a lucid dreamer, but I know for sure that that's a thing, and I've been basically telling everybody that, well, it's it's such an in-depth experience for me that I dreamt about it for 2 nights afterwards.
Yeah.
And overall, who better to adapt a movie that loves the 80s than
a man whose entire career is dedicated, was basically born of the 80s.
Spielberg was one of the definitive directors of the 80s. Whenever someone asks me there's a certain point where I tell people, if it wasn't directed by Spielberg or John Hughes, it was probably made by Chris Columbus. It's kind of a weird tangent to go on from, but Spielberg did a lot of his best work in the 80s.
Indiana Jones, Back to the Future. He started jumping into producing more in the 80s with Back to the Future and Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
He's he helped build the careers of guys like Robert Zemeckis and the aforementioned Chris Columbus and all that kind of stuff.
He was great friends with a lot of the other great filmmakers of the time, with Stanley Kubrick, George Lucas, the Holy Trinity of directors right there.
And essentially, Spielberg is he's not the last great director, but he is definitely the greatest living director of our time, at least. To the point that, he basically took a vacation from making this movie to make another movie, and that movie
got
nominated for Best Picture this year. That's his vacation. That's essentially his vacation movie. He took a few months off to make another completely different movie, and it ended up getting nominated for Oscars.
And he had less time to work on that than he did on this one.
Because this one he's been working on for a long time, and wow, we are talking a lot.
Yeah.
We're basically almost to the theater. By the way, our usual theater is back, so we're back into a bit more of a comfortable speed on when we're going to be hitting the places.
Yeah, we're going to be going to movies a little bit more often now because
we can actually go the usual couple
because
minutes.
it's closer, because we have closer access to our theater now.
Though of course we are going to be taking a break after this video, not because, but only because
there's nothing we want to see out.
Yeah, there's not a lot we want to see out. So, but we're rambling. We're getting off track. We'll get to you after we get out of the theater because we're going to see the movie Ready Player One. Okay. See you after the jump.
Yep.
Bye. Okay. All right, guys. So we are out, and what did we think of that? I really liked it.
It was a really fun time.
Yeah, it's not one of Spielberg. I'm not gonna call it Spielberg's best because obviously it's not. It was never gonna be one of Spielberg's best movies ever.
No, but it was definitely a fun ride, and I think talking about it is the best course of action right now.
All right, so let's talk about it. Starting with the direction. Spielberg, the master of this, and of course you get all the trademark Spielberg's stuff. You get all the great action, and there's all these one single take shots and incredible action scenes. The opening race sequence is so exhilarating right off the bat.
Yeah, we get so much cool stuff. It's not a lot. It takes a lot of liberties from the book, and I think that works a little bit in the movie's favor.
Yeah, the book meanders a bit sometimes. Once the plot gets going, it gets going, but it tends to meander in places. This one, it's a movie. It needs to be a 3-act structure. It needs to be tight and obvious. And the fact that the author, Ernest Cline, actually has a screenwriter's credits actually shows that at least some of these changes are approved by him, by the fact that he was, clearly sitting in the same, at least had a draft of the script that Zach Penn rewrote.
Yeah, we also had. Now, I honestly think my opinion of this movie was swayed a little bit by the fact that there was a lot of haters of the book coming out of the woodwork as soon as the first trailer dropped. So I think my opinion started to get swayed a little bit. I was like, do I just have bad taste? Am I no different than the Twihards? But once I saw this movie, I was like, this is it. This is the movie I wanted out of this book when I read it.
And in a lot of ways, the movie has some of the shortcomings of the book, but it also fixes a lot of them, because with the book, it was just like, I know that it was essentially Ernest Cline going, I know all about this, so let me tell you all about it. But here, it's a screenplay. You can't write the scene direction and a whole lot of exposition into a screenplay without it getting boring. So obviously, that was tapered off a bit. But the first few minutes of the movie are a lot of exposition, but mostly because they need to set up the actual world and not just the references that they're going to be throwing in. And yeah, there are a lot of references.
But the references are fun a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's not, and the references don't bog down the movie, because a lot of them are fixed up and are fixed up. Originally in the book, a lot of the actual challenges that the characters go through are actually
going through movies and stuff like that.
Actually acting out popular movies of the 1980s and 80s, or just playing video games. But obviously, when they were thinking, okay, we got to make it a movie, we got to make it a visual medium, they decided, let's make it a little bit more visually interesting than just as to Wade playing Joust against a hologram.
Yeah. We also have, now let's talk about his performances. So, Ty Sheridan, he does good for what he's doing. Yeah, he does pretty good. I mean, personally, I thought he's not exactly like Wade was described in the book, but once I actually saw him in the movie, I'm like, he actually does look a bit like Wade was described in the book. He might be a little skinnier. Yeah. We also have Olivia Cooke, who did amazing in this. Yeah, she basically played the part well, and she's mostly done she only mostly did horror movies up until Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, which I haven't seen, but I've seen. She made me cry. Okay then. By dying. Spoilers. It's called the. Anyway, then we've got okay, MVP Mark Rylance. Definitely the best part of this movie. The fact of the matter is that the character is basically been set in the movie and kind of in the book, but they didn't dawn on it to the point of how he would compose himself. But in the book, he was described. He's supposed to be the Steve Jobs-esque figure, except for one thing. He is not charisma. Does not have the charisma of Jobs at all. He's not a people person. He's not even a Steve Wozniak in the charisma department. So essentially, in his performance as James Halliday, he essentially plays this socially awkward guy who's constantly stuttering over his words, not showing a whole lot of emotion. He's just kind of awkward. He's just kind of talking like this. He's just kind of talking very quietly and not making a lot of eye contact. But Rylance also plays Halliday's in-game avatar, who is essentially like if Dumbledore and Gandalf and just about every wise old sage wizard threw everything were thrown together into one big charismatic package. And so we see him jump from that character, this like quiet reserved character, to this big booming "Hello, little hobbits" kind of thing. So Mark Rylance, the ability to do both of those in one performance, sometimes within the same scene, the exact same scene, just shows how good of an actor he is and why he is Steven Spielberg's lucky charm of the moment. We have Simon Pegg. He's not in the movie much, but for what he's in, I quite enjoyed seeing him. He gave us a few little jokes and a nice little twist at the end, which we will not be spoiling, because why would we? Even if you've read the book, it's not. Even if you've read the book, it's still a twist for you. We have Ben Mendelsohn playing Nolan and Nolan. Sorry, damn it. No, but he plays the bad guy again. He's different than Rogue One. Sorrento. Nolan Sorrento, the bad guy. He's different than he is in Rogue One.
Not just because he has an American accent.
Because he has an American accent. This is a different guy. He's not unlike with Rogue One, and I'm just gonna quick compare him to Rogue One. This isn't a guy fighting for control. This isn't a guy who has control and is afraid he'll lose it. This is a guy who has control and he wants more.
It's okay. So essentially, the entire movie and the book are essentially pro net neutrality. The whole plot of the villains is that essentially they are the big corporate monsters who want to take over and throw ads and everything all over the place.
You know, fuckface, he wanted to destroy net neutrality.
Essentially, the whole plot of the book and the movie is that these guys want to take over essentially the internet. And so the whole point, and so they got to take him down. And so essentially the character's motivation is, I've got power over this multinational conglomerate, but I want power over everything.
It's kind of like if Veruca Salt using her dad's peanut factory to empty chocolate bars for the golden ticket was an entire plot point of the movie.
Instead of the first 5 minutes of her character introduction. That's basically it. And a lot of the actors. It's a Spielberg movie. Spielberg knows how to get what he wants out of any actor. Even give Shia LaBeouf all the shit you want, but he got what he wanted out of him.
Yeah, we got a bunch of great performances. It's amazing because we spent a lot of time in an animated world. So this is Spielberg's second time working primarily with animation.
The thing is, it's not a hugely animated movie. The big difference between the book and the movie is that the movie spends a lot more time in the real world.
But still, we're spending a lot of time most of the movie is still taking place in the Oasis.
So Spielberg is essentially taking everything he learned with Tintin and putting it in that. And I just remembered that Simon Pegg was in Tintin.
Yeah. That's basically it. He's taking everything he learned from Tintin and moving it into this movie. Except he doesn't have to worry about the uncanny valley factor.
Because these characters don't need to look real because this is a video game. It's very clear that these characters need to only look human enough. Alan Silvestri's score, by the way, incredible.
We got just enough hints of Back to the Future to give it that nostalgic jump.
It's got all the standard trademarks of a signature 80s Alan Silvestri score, and it's all in there. Yeah.
And we're probably going to be talking about Alan Silvestri more because he's reviewing the next movie we're doing.
Because he's scoring the next movie we're reviewing. But
yes.
But what else can be said? The movie's good. The movie's good, and we need a whole separate video just to talk about all the Easter eggs we saw and we saw.
And we had to have to see it again just to see it just to try and see more, which is probably what we're gonna see this movie again eventually, and we're gonna be pointing out as many Easter eggs as possible.
Yeah. So, is that it?
That's all I got.
All right. We are almost home, guys. So until then, like, favorite, subscribe. Be sure to tell us in the comments what you think of Ready Player One. No spoilers in the comments, please. And be sure to tune in. We're going to be taking most of the month of April off, but be sure to check us out next time when we evacuate the city, engage the defenses, and get this man a shield. Bye.